we can do questions, yeah. I'm happy to do, so there's a mic down here. I'm happy to do questions on anything that you want to talk about also. So the Q&A is actually more fun.
If you have a question, come up here. We'll try to take a few questions before we have dinner. Anybody have a question? Right here, sir. Real quick.
We talk about the people of the Jewish faith. Why is, I mean, you're very outspoken conservative. Why are so many of the Jewish faith so liberal when you look at national policies? We seem to be, the conservatives seem to want to defend Israel. And can you give an explanation about what their thoughts are and why they're like
this? Actually, so this is the question that I get the most frequently for people who can't hear. He's basically asking why Jews vote left. And the answer is because most Jews are not Jewish. This is the actual answer. By religious propensity, by religious practice, the vast majority of Jews do not observe really any form of Judaism. They're the most atheistic ethnic group, ethno-religious group in the country. There's a difference between being ethnically Jewish and religiously Jewish, right? The Orthodox Jews actually vote something like 70-30 Republican. People who are, as you get more observant, just like with most religion in America, as you get more observant religiously, you tend to become more right-wing. And that's true for Jews as well. So it's actually not a great shock. It's very weird, actually, that people say, you know, why do Jews vote so left? It's sort of like saying, how do people who are born Catholic vote? It's not a really meaningful statistics because there are a lot of lapsed Catholics, and they probably vote to the left. So you actually have to look to the practice. People who are practicing Jews vote largely conservative.
Okay, sir.
Hi, Ben. Pennsylvania has a pretty unique constitution in that for juries, they're given the power to judge both the facts of the case and the law of the case. In other states, this would be known as jury nullification. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm not, and one of the purposes of having juries in the first place was the possibility of jury nullification, actually. If you wanted a judge to just apply the law, then you'd never have jury nullification. I mean, it's something that's taken place throughout American history, is the people saying, people on a jury saying that, yeah, this guy's guilty under the law, but we don't care. That's one of the features, not one of the bugs of the system. So it's not something I'm ardently against.
You talked about the tyranny of regulators. What do you think of the idea that we can win back and expand our majorities by defining the Democrats as the undemocratic party that thinks unelected bureaucrats ought to run the country, and us as people who think that elected representatives of the people should run the country?
You know, I think that it's a great pitch. I think that this is something, actually, this is one of the areas, as you may have noticed. So on my podcast, I have a popular podcast that is named after me, and this on the podcast I do a routine called Good Trump, Bad Trump. We actually have a theme song, and one of the things that Trump has been consistently good on is regulation. Trump does understand this, and one of the most popular parts of his agenda is the idea that he's going to slash and burn the bureaucracy. Most Americans hate the bureaucracy, most Americans hate the regulators, and they should, because it is immoral to have a bunch of unelected bureaucrats sitting in offices without any sort of oversight who get to define the vast majority of things that happen in your life. And one of the great tragedies of American governance since the beginning of the 20th century is the abdication of the legislature in favor of these regulators, because you have an interest. If you're a legislator, you have a tremendous interest in never being held accountable for what you do, so you just pass a vague law, kick it over to the regulators, and have the regulators fill in the gaps, and then if it goes bad, you blame the regulators, and if it's great, you take credit. But that's not how the system was supposed to work, as you point out. Virtually all regulatory agencies should be immediately dismantled, and if Congress wants to pass a law, they can damn well pass a law themselves.
So, Ben, I think most people would agree with me that economics are downstream of politics. It's my opinion that politics is downstream from religion. Do you think that America is finally ready for an honest dialogue on religion and what political systems come from it?
So I missed what kind of religion you're talking about, sorry.
I'm saying in general.
Religious revival? Yes, I think that listen, I think that, this isn't me, this is Alexis de Tocqueville. Alexis de Tocqueville said, when he toured the country in the 1830s, he said what made America different from every other country on the face of the earth was not our Constitution, it was not our Congress, it was not our freedom of the press. What made us different from every other nation was the fact that virtually everybody belonged to a social institution or a church. And the reason that was great is it meant that you had support systems. So the most effective argument the left has is, but who will take care of the poor, right? The most effective argument they have is, but who will take care of the unfortunate? And the answer used to be in America, we will, right? Me and my religious community will take care of somebody in our community who's failing, and we all do. We all give charity, right? Red states give vastly more charity than blue states. Religious people give vastly more charity than people who vote Democrat. I think there does need to be, in order for there to be a revival of conservatism, I think there has to be a simple answer to this, and that is that Americans are an unbelievably generous people. We are still the most religious Western country in the world. But that needs to kick up a notch. And we do need more people involved in their community in a way that allows voluntarism and charity to take the place of government and force.
Thanks, Ben. I enjoyed your podcast as well. Just wanted to ask you about the Obergefell decision and your opinion of the decision itself, as well as what your long-term view is for how we define marriage in the future and going forward.
Okay, so the Obergefell decision is legally a disaster area. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that states are barred from regulating marriage to be between a man and a woman. My personal view of the same-sex marriage issue is that government should get completely out of the business of marriage, ultimately, altogether. And the reason I say that is not because I believe in the morality of same-sex marriage. I'm an Orthodox Jew. I don't, right? The reason that I say that is because if states enshrine same-sex marriage alongside heterosexual marriage, what they are going to do next is they are going to use that as a baton to wield against churches and religious institutions and religious schools. They're going to say, we have a law in the books that says that straight marriages are the same as same-sex marriages, and then there will be a church that says we're not going to perform a same-sex marriage. And they'll say, well, you're now discriminating under the discrimination law in our state, and so we're going to withdraw your tax-exempt status. And there's good precedent for them to do something like this. Bob Jones University case in 1981 did this with regard to interracial dating, right? I'm not against interracial dating, but the government does not have a role here. Doesn't matter. That's what the government will do. The government will now crack down on a bunch of religious institutions because people were too stupid on the right to say, just get the government out of it completely. By the way, if you think that the government has done a wonderful job promoting marriage, I would recommend that you look around. The government's done an absolutely horrific job promoting marriage. The fact is that for me, as a religious person, I have two marital documents. I have my one that's my religious marital document, my ketubah, and then I have one from the state. The one from the state is buried somewhere in my garage, and the one that's signed by a rabbi is the one that I actually care about because that's the one that said that I could have sex with my wife and have babies with her. So my view is that if you privatize marriage, you'll be doing a world of good because government poisons virtually everything that it touches.
Hi, Ben. So I'm 18, and I like to debate with people my age, but I would like to ask what the best way to do that is, especially in this age where when they're wrong, they get louder and yell.
I mean, I think that you first have to determine whether a debate is worth debating. So this is always what I say to college students particularly, is that, and it's true for everybody, we all spend a lot of time on Facebook arguing with Aunt Ida, who's an idiot, and on your deathbed, you're going to look back and think to yourself, I wish I had those 2 hours back. As you choke out that last breath, you're going to think, Aunt Ida. And so just think to yourself before you start a debate, is this productive? And there are really only a couple reasons it's productive. One, the person is convincible. Two, the audience you're speaking in front of is convincible. If you're doing it in front of an audience, your goal is not to convince the person you're talking to. Your goal is to humiliate them in their position as badly as you can possibly do. That's my debate recommendation.
Hi. Earlier you talked about we don't want our conservative elected officials to ride in on a wave of lies as opposed to truth. Is it discouraging to you to see President Trump eliciting such support for such polarizing views, and then even to see some within the Republican Party having to jump on board along with those views?
It is disturbing to me that there are lots of people who are willing to follow a leader wherever he will go. And so this is why I say that President Trump should be held to the exact same standards which I held President Obama, and this is why I thought Obama was a bad president. Right? He should be held to the standard of truth and conservatism. When he does good stuff, I am more than happy to praise him. I hope I spend nothing but the remaining 198 weeks of his first term praising him. But he's going to have to do good stuff in order for me to do that. And yes, it is disturbing to me when he says things that are eminently untrue, and then people immediately shift their position in order to meet him halfway. I don't think that that's an appropriate thing to do. My position didn't change just because President Trump was elected, and it wouldn't have changed if he wasn't elected. I think that this is what I say about principle versus policy. And that's true not just with regard to dishonesty, it's also true with regard to actual political principle. And to give a couple of examples, forget about, Trump is not a Russian agent, okay? There's no evidence that Donald Trump is working for Vladimir Putin and he and Natasha are occupying the basement of the Russian embassy. Okay, there's no evidence of that whatsoever. So far, it's all a bunch of crap, and the media's been overplaying it. It is true that President Trump was very warm toward Russia in his public rhetoric during the campaign, and that had a marked impact on on Republican opinion vis-a-vis Russia. You can look in the public opinion polls. The approval ratings for Vladimir Putin went up by something like 20%, and that's almost solely due to President Trump. The same thing has happened with free trade. It used to be the free trade was a basic stock and trade Republican position, and that's taken a significant blow under President Trump, and it's going to continue to take a significant blow. This is not stuff that I approve of, and I think this is, honestly, it's disturbing to me. And I think that I think it's incumbent on people who know better to stand by principle and say when they disagree with President Trump. Again, there was the argument to be made during the election cycle. It wasn't fully convincing to me, but it was at least an argument with some credibility, which is, okay, you may disagree with him, but shut up because he's fighting Hillary. That was an argument. It wasn't my favorite argument, and I like it very much, but it's an argument. He's no longer fighting Hillary. Now he's the president. Do we get a good presidency or a bad presidency? If you want him to succeed, then he should be doing good things with his policy, and you should be holding his feet to the fire.
Hi, Ben. I'm a small business owner, and a lot of the left tends to add socialist tendencies and policies towards my arguments as a small business owner. What's the best way for me to combat those arguments, and what is your opinion on that stance as being a small business owner?
Well, I mean, I think that the easiest thing to say as a small business owner to people is, I'm hiring you. I mean, this is one of the great myths of American politics, is that the poor are somehow screwed by the rich. There's not a poor person in America who's ever worked for anyone except a poor person or the government, except for a rich person or the government. Right? Nobody has ever worked a job for a poor person because poor people have no money. They can't pay you. Or you've never been employed by a poor person. Right? The fact is that most people who start small businesses are not raking it in hand over fist. Most people who are starting small businesses are surviving on the margins of their business until hopefully they're able to build something bigger. The antipathy toward business by the Democratic Party is actually evil because it is based on the notion that money itself is corrupting, and that the minute I wish somebody would ask Bernie Sanders this. Bernie Sanders, who owns 3 vacation homes. I wish somebody would ask Bernie Sanders this at some point. He keeps saying that rich people are screwing poor people. At what point did they become evil? When they were poor, they were nice. Like, is there an income point where you make $1 above that and then suddenly you become an evil user? Like, how did that happen exactly? Did it just magically happen? You were infused with the spirit of Satan when you made more than $100,000 a year? It's absolute bigotry against people who attempt to earn. And it's not just, I also, by the way, hate the distinction between small business and big business. Business is business. A big business is a more successful business than a small business unless it's getting some sort of, magical deal from the government, in which case they shouldn't be doing that anyway. So whenever people say, like, small business, virtuous, big business, evil, it's like, no, people who are engaged in private sector transactions and voluntary transactions are doing good for the world, regardless of whether they're successful or unsuccessful.
Mr. Shapiro, it's a pleasure to finally be speaking with you. So at colleges nowadays, they teach a lot about inclusivity, and so I'm very curious as to know what your preferred pronouns are.
Oh, yeah. So, somebody asked me this once, but I'd been watching Game of Thrones a lot, and so I suggested that everyone had to call me Your Grace. All of this is so stupid, but it is a deeper underlying condition in politics. My subjective truth. I'm living my truth. There's no such thing as your truth. Your truth is bullshit, okay? There's just the truth, and then all the crap that you're spouting right now, right? So this idea that I'm supposed to change the pronouns that I use because you have a different perspective on what pronouns I ought to use about you is an imposition on me. This is my person. The whole transgender debate, I think, is so stupid because I don't care what you do. If you want to have hormone treatments, if you have this difficulty, if you want to dress how you want, if you want to have surgery, if you want to do all those things, I could not care less about that. What I do care about is when you are saying that you're going to force me to use a pronoun that is not factually true about you, and then force me to teach my children things that are not factually true.
So I have a quick question, which is, when in your life did you discover that the thug life had chosen you?
So for those who haven't seen, there's this series of videos on YouTube called Ben Shapiro Thug Life that were created by some guy in New York, apparently. I don't know him. And he took all of the clips of me kind of destroying college students at my lectures or destroying Piers Morgan or any of these, and then he basically put in a graphic of sunglasses coming down on my face and put a blunt in my mouth and then starts playing rap music in the background. I mean, the thug life chose me at birth. I knew from the time I was a child. As Lady Gaga might say, I was born this way.
And Ben, we have one more question for you.
Hi, Ben. I was wondering what advice you might have for students or parents or prospective students on where they should go to college. One of my biggest concerns is that the majority of universities in today's culture and society almost have a socialist bent to them, and I'm worried that will only go further as we advance as a society.
Yeah, so I think that we have to do an honest assessment of ourselves and our kids as far as colleges. So if your kid is not solid in a conservative perspective and goes to a lefty college, they will probably come out a leftist, because apathy tends to lead toward leftism. If you want to go to the cool kid parties and smoke dope and do all the things that college students do, then and you don't care about politics, you'll probably end up embracing lefty positions, because it's not popular to walk into parties with a book of Hayek under your arm. I know, I've tried. So it's that said, if you are strong in your conservative positions or in your conservative principles, then I think a left college is the best place for you, because you can go and you can test your arguments against the other side's arguments, learn their arguments, learn how to counter those arguments. UCLA was a great place for me because I had very strong principles going in, and so it was a wonderful place for me to learn the other side's arguments. Harvard Law was great for me because I was able to go there and sharpen those arguments, learn their arguments as well as they know their arguments, and then figure out exactly what's wrong with those arguments and learn how to pick them apart. So it can be the phrase that I use about this is that lefty colleges can turn coal into diamonds. I mean, it's a very pressure-filled environment, but only if the coal can stand up to the pressure and not crumble. So you have to determine whether your kids are capable of that. If not, there are colleges like Liberty, there are colleges like Hillsdale, there are colleges like King's College. There are colleges that are out there that are more steeped in kind of classic tradition, and I think that those are wonderful places, whether you're conservative or liberal. I think that those are wonderful places to go. So that's my general take on all of this. But all I would say for young people is that now's the time. If you could do anything as a young person right now with regard to politics and the news, I would just turn off the news for the next 2 years and just read philosophy. Get your central principles straight, and then when you come back to the news, you'll understand it better. You know, instead of reading CNBC every day, go and read Hayek. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.